Good morning all, my name is Cameron England, Business Editor at the Advertiser, and I'd like to welcome our virtual audience to the 7th Fearless Conversations event. This series is a collaboration between the Advertiser and Flinders University, and it's about being brave in our thinking about how we drive South Australia forward and challenge ourselves to position this great state for success. Topics being discussed over the 13 weeks of the program include high-tech innovation, tourism, infrastructure, education, health, and more. For each discussion, we have assembled a group of thought leaders to pose a series of questions to in order to explore their views on the opportunities and challenges we have in relation to each topic. Today, we're exploring manufacturing. Naturally, manufacturing has played a huge role in our state. However, in recent years, there's been a seismic shift with the winding down of car manufacturing in concert with the surge in investment in advanced manufacturing, defence and space, centred around hubs such as the Tonsley Innovation District and Lot 14 in the CBD, and in Edinburgh and down at Osborne at the shipyards. You can feel free to join the conversation through Twitter using the hashtag #FearlessConversations or in the comments section at advertiser.com.au. Before I introduce today's panellists, I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains and pay respect to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land. We acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today, and we also extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations. Now on to today's discussion. Today we are joined by BAE Systems Maritime Australia Continuous Naval Shipbuilding Strategy Director Sharon Wilson, Flinders University's Pro Vice Chancellor Research Impact John Spoehr, Tech entrepreneur George Freney, Audra McCarthy, Chief Executive of the Defence Teaming Centre, and REDARC Managing Director Anthony Kittel. So,
morning, Cameron.
Welcome everyone.
Morning.
I've spoken to John over many years about manufacturing in South Australia. John, you've done a huge amount of work in this area, so maybe you can help us set the scene. So, advanced manufacturing was seen as a key growth area in the state's economy following the Holden closure in 2017 and Mitsubishi earlier than that. How successful has our transition been from traditional to advanced manufacturing and high-tech industries over the past, say, 4 to 5 years or so?
Yeah, morning, Cameron. Great to be here. Well, manufacturing's always been centrally important to South Australia, but of course we've experienced some really challenging times over the last decade or so with the closure of the automotive industry. At its height, we had over 100,000 people working in the manufacturing industry here in South Australia. So it was a core industry here in South Australia, generating lots of high-value, high-skilled jobs, and was a significant contributor to GSP. We took a hit. Everybody knows that when the auto industry closed, and we were forced to then look at where to from here. And I think the position we're in at the moment is that there's now consensus, I think, in South Australia and nationally that advanced manufacturing is fundamentally important to the core of an economy. This idea is, or the idea is that what you make is what you know. So it's fundamentally important to engage in manufacturing because in the 21st century economy, it is a driver of, and it continues to be a driver of knowledge-intensive economic growth and employment. And many of the people we've got around the table here today are involved in businesses that will be at the forefront of the resurgence of manufacturing following the closure of the automotive industry, in particular in areas of space, where we can expect significant growth. Shipbuilding, obviously, is going to be a major driver of growth in advanced manufacturing. Consumer electronic goods, recreational vehicles, the grey nomads. I'm sure Anthony will talk a little bit about that in a while, but we've got a range of businesses that are positioning themselves for growth in advanced manufacturing in the 21st century. And that's very important if we to maintain the sorts of living standards that we've come to enjoy. And what we know more than most other states, I think, is that manufacturing is the foundation to higher living standards because it's only through manufacturing that you maintain high levels of investment in research and development. Manufacturing is the most research and development intensive sectors of the economy, so we must recognise that. So it's terrific that we've got consensus in Australia and South Australia about the importance of advanced manufacturing, and we've got a lot of support going towards trying to accelerate the growth of advanced manufacturing over the next decade. And what I'm hoping we're on the cusp of is a renaissance, if you like, of manufacturing in Australia.
And I might get a bit of an explanation about Industry 4.0 and related technologies are, I guess, AI, robotics and additive manufacturing. Perhaps Anthony and Sharon, what opportunities does the change in technology and these new technologies offer for your business, and what sort of roles and maybe products does that bring in for you?
I think John hit the nail on the head that manufacturing is thriving through our investment in R&D. And I guess through that investment, there's a whole range of jobs being created in manufacturing that probably didn't exist 5 or 10 years ago around data science, augmented virtual reality, robotics, all these sorts of things that are, I guess, enabling us as a low to medium volume, high value added industry with the aim of exporting. I think that's really the key, is that we're not focused inwardly, we're focused outwardly. Diversifying our business in lots of different market areas, which is exciting for young people coming into this industry, apprenticeships, traineeships, degrees, masters, all the different qualifications that we need in our businesses. So really exciting time to be joining manufacturing.
And Sharon, what does manufacturing look like for BAE? There might be a traditional view of shipbuilding as cutting steel, but obviously there's a lot more to it, digital twinning, things like this. What does it look like for your company?
So I think I agree with Anthony. What we're seeing is a change in the kinds of people that are actually part of the manufacturing, and people who might have gone to university or done a trade would see that their skills and the knowledge that they're actually developing can be used in a manufacturing environment where they might not have seen that before. When we talk about creating a digital twin, for example, we might start with the engineering, with the design, but that flows all the way through into manufacturing. And one of the things that I like to refer to is, when we capture knowledge. So if we've got, let's say, a fitter working on a ship, in the old days, they might have put together something, had a bit of difficulty, might have told his mate that was really hard to put that together, but that was it. And then, 9-10 years later, when the maintenance person was pulling that apart, had exactly the same problem. Well, today, that worker can talk to that future maintainer by capturing that data as part of the digital twin and a part of the information. So that information lives on beyond the task that person's doing on the day. So I think we've got a very different connection, if you like, from the people who are manufacturing the products right through life in terms of how those products are operated and maintained going forward. That's very different. And going to Anthony's point, that's got to be exciting for people who are working in our industry to say, I'm not just doing this task, I'm actually part of the whole infrastructure that provides the support and the products to our warfighters.
And as part of the job of people like us, I guess, communicating that the jobs in manufacturing aren't what we might have thought of. It's not production line and Hills Industries as it might have been 30 years ago, but it's actually a lot of design, some very high-tech jobs, additive manufacturing, 3D printing. Is that part of the role that you have, Anthony, trying to get people into your?
Yeah, all of those areas. Following on from what Sharon said. 3 years ago, there was the creation of a digital apprenticeship that didn't exist before. It's about, I guess, connected products, connected machines, that the data that we're gathering is so important for our customers. It's so important for our businesses so that we can make everyone's life easier. And we need people that are interested to further their career. It's no longer do a trade and stop. There's lots of steps now that you can do a higher apprenticeship. You can go on and do an associate degree, a degree, and really build a long-term career in this industry. And I think they're the opportunities that we want to paint to young people, that you have, if you're prepared to, undergo continuous learning and develop your career, then the sky's the limit.
I'd just like to add to that. I think, Anthony's got a good point talking about, young people in terms of a career path. But we developed with Flinders University a Diploma in Digital Technologies last year that our 51 of our workforce, so existing workers, participated in. That was highly successful. You know, when those people went back into the shipyard, so they spent a year doing that course, went back into the shipyard, into very different jobs. So people who had come from trades backgrounds are in detailed design, and they're bringing their trade experience to bear into the digital design planning activities. And basically, you know, they'll say it changed their lives. And some of those guys were, let's say, more mature students. And so the change in existing workforces' capabilities and bringing them along that journey as well is just as important. And giving them, I guess, rewarding outcomes as a result.
And Cameron, I think we're seeing a sort of transformation of occupations as the demand from employers, whether it be in defence or space or other areas, grows for people who work across different disciplines, if you like. So the division between, say, mechanical engineering and electronic engineering is that gap between those two disciplines is narrowing, and those two disciplines are sort of merging into new disciplines that are growing into new occupations, if you like. We're seeing that occur all the time at the moment.
And to, I guess, sort of not really coin a phrase, but they're very cool jobs, aren't they? They're sort of exciting jobs. You get to make things, you get to design things.
Yeah, they're very creative jobs. There are lots of challenges, lots of problems to solve in industry, and so they're very exciting careers.
And George, you are based down at Lot 14. We were reflecting just before this chat on the remarkable progress of some of the companies down there, perhaps from 5 years ago, from almost a standing start. We have companies with satellites in space. We have companies like Airspeeder, you know, flying cars. It is quite amazing. Where does manufacturing fit in a tech hub like a Lot 14 or a Tonsley?
Well, I think I was really fortunate to be on the government's Entrepreneurship Advisory Board from May 2018. And at that point, Lot 14 was just an idea. There was no one there. The Space Agency was something we were trying to create here in South Australia. And to see the evolution of that and the number of jobs that it's created, sort of in the design phase as well as the manufacturing phase. So if you think of Innovor, that's now a 40+ person company building satellites at Lot 14. You think of Myriota, they're a 50+ person company who are building satellites and technologies, and I think they're using South Australian companies in the supply chain to build the printed circuit boards. You've got Fleet Space Technologies, not based at Lot 14, but really part of the environment there. They're employing, I think, upwards of 100 people soon. And that's, in my view, creating pull-through for the supply chain in South Australia and giving more diversity than just defence for all of those companies that provide parts into that. And I think, interestingly, it was this environment that gave us the confidence. So we founded a company called Space Machines Company to build orbital transfer vehicles about 1.5 years ago. And this environment is what enables people to be fearless in sort of pursuing those sort of objectives. And our objective there in 5-6 years from now is we'd be building one of these vehicles every month, at least, and employing 100 people in South Australia and probably across the country in the supply chain that provides parts into that. And I think this advanced manufacturing focus and the environment that's been created is giving these companies the license and opportunity to be fearless in this way.
And Audra, I might bring you in here. What about jobs? What are the roles that need to be filled in the manufacturing and the defence sector in the future? I visited an occasional shipyard, and you're quite likely to see somebody in a virtual reality helmet or an augmented reality helmet, for example. What is the diversity of the future defence employee?
You're still going to see your basic trades as well as your higher end engineering and project management skill sets needed in the sector. But it's what those trades people are actually doing and how they're doing it is contrastly different to how those trades are traditionally known. As Sharon alluded to before, that with the digital technologies, we're taking and seeing tradespeople embracing more digital tools to be able to undertake and still do their trades. And what's important is that commitment to lifelong learning, as Anthony said, that in the way we actually do manufacturing now, we are now focusing on value add. And to be able to continue to grow a manufacturing sector, that ongoing commitment to value add means that we are continuing to learn and develop our workforce and evolve those skills. So that means we need to have a better pipeline of commitment to taking people from wherever they choose to enter the workforce with a basic skill set and giving them a pathway to be able to grow that skill set, and not just focusing on the high-end engineering skills, the degrees in the service sector, but also looking at where the practical application is for those skill sets, whether it is starting off in assembly. I mean, even if you look at what traditionally we regard as a low-skilled role of assembly, it actually does require a lot of skill, as Anthony will probably tell you, that when you're dealing with electronics assembly, it's meticulous attention to detail, the ability to be able to adhere to stringent quality controls. So what we would traditionally say as low skilled or unskilled is actually still got very high skills and a development pathway forward for someone to have a really rewarding successful career.
And Anthony, you've been growing pretty quickly over the past few years. Everyone seems to be out camping, during the pandemic, so that's got to be helping out. And you've always put a lot of money into research, I know. Do we have enough people to do these jobs? And what do we need to do if we don't? Do we bring them in? Do we need to start training earlier? How does that sit for you?
Yes, certainly that investment to training is critical in each of our businesses, like the investment in R&D. It really needs to be matched. So, we're working closely with Flinders University, taking students for vacation experience and giving them opportunities so that rather than wait to the end of their degree, they're actually able to get out in their first, second, third year of their studies and get a hands-on experience and see what it's like to work in a business. You mentioned additive manufacturing. I mean, now you can play around and prototype a product, set it in motion overnight, come back in the morning, see the outcome of your work, test and validate it, and say, okay, that's not quite right, and then go again. So this speed to market capability that provides us is amazing. And so to have young people straight out of engineering school and being able to utilise these tools, I find it really exciting, and I see their faces and see how much they love it, and they can, it fail fast. There's no problem. We keep iterating. We come up with great design that's world class.
And when the pandemic hit, we saw ourselves having to scramble to, start manufacturing surgical masks. There's a recent Flinders Uni report which found that Australia's dependence on imported goods is the highest in the developed world. And we're very vulnerable to global supply chain disruptions. So, John, is it important that we turn this around? We do have a bit of a reputation as a country that tends to dig things up and send it overseas. South Australia's been a bit different, but is there a long way to go, in terms of bolstering those supply chains locally?
Look, there is, Cameron, and if there's any upside, and it's difficult to find one with COVID, it's that it's refocused our attention on the importance of manufacturing. Not just here in Australia, but internationally. And for me, that's very, very welcome. And it's a great opportunity, if you like, to build and accelerate the growth of advanced manufacturing in this environment where there's clearly multi-partisan support for the centrality and importance of manufacturing in the economy. So it's off the back of that understanding of the importance of making things domestically. Not that we're going to put barriers up in the way of imports. When that's not the way we need to go. We need to encourage exports and also be a trading nation, a fair trading nation. But we have let the pendulum swing too far in terms of our ability as a nation to be able to make many of the things that we once made. So I think that's widely recognised now. National policy is recalibrating. The Biden administration in the United States undertook a 100-day review of this very, very question and looked at every subsector of manufacturing in forensic detail to make some decisions, good decisions about what should be the focus of manufacturing going forward. We've begun to do a bit of that in Australia, but we need to do more of it over coming months and years and emulate, I think, some of the good practice that I observe in the United States and also Europe, which we can touch on a little later if you like.
And just quickly, Anthony, do you find that the Made in Australia tag is a big selling point, obviously locally, but even overseas in terms of quality?
Absolutely. I mean, our customers, particularly in North America, Their view is if it can survive in the Australian outback, it'll survive in the US. So, you know, we're really proud to have Made in Australia all over our products, all over our packaging. It's for us, it's a badge of honour, and our customers think the same way.
But you have to question, after the pandemic, there's been increased attention on the need to support Australian made. And it's a little ironic that Australian companies have to spend the extra effort to differentiate themselves in the market to their own local consumers that they're Australian made, yet our imports don't have to make it very clear that they're an imported product. And so going back to John's point, that the policy landscape is beginning to change, but there's so much more that we can do. I mean, it's great to be able to have the Australian made logo, but to be part of that construct actually costs. So if you're an SME, to be able to differentiate, you've got to invest in that, you've got to subscribe to that logo, you've got to pay an ongoing licence fee just so that you can support a local industry in Australia. Shouldn't it be the other way around, that if you're importing a product, it should be very clearly labelled.
Imported product.
This is an imported
concept, isn't it, Anthony? Having your competitors there not made in Australia?
So not made in Australia. So people go, okay, not made in Australia, I'll go to this product. It makes it a lot easier for the consumer to then make a decision. And on the flip side, as the younger generation become more environmentally aware, they're starting to look for sustainable products that are being made. So products that last and are not just throwaway society. I guess my generation are the throwaway society, where we buy it cheap, we throw it away, we get another one. The younger generation will reduce, reuse and recycle. And so that's where the strength
Sustainability.
and sustainability of Australian products, where they're made to last, is actually starting to get traction. And I think these are things that need to support better policy to build an advanced manufacturing that's going to continue to grow and support our local economy. You also need a significant investment in the infrastructure. Over the years, we have not, I guess our policy has not, supported the significant infrastructure into advanced manufacturing that's needed, because we've gone back to our roots. It's mining, let's just rip it up and export it. Let's not try and value add. And now we're seeing announcements from the government about the need to actually look after our rare earth minerals and start actually processing the minerals to be able to manufacture the high-end chips and inputs that are needed to be able to support the sector.
Do we need some policies that focus on, I guess, value adding those minerals? One of the things that really strikes me is that there's a big lithium push on at the moment in mining in Australia, which will be sent overseas, turned into lithium-ion batteries, which we'll then buy back, which we'll then send again overseas to recycle potentially. So from a policy setting point of view, perhaps, John, is it something that should be looked at in terms of, I guess, incentivizing industry to get into value add in these areas?
Well, there's enormous benefit from getting into value add in the first place, really, and that's the sort of whole point of advanced manufacturing. It enables companies that may have thought that they couldn't be competitive internationally to be competitive through the adoption of advanced technologies, digital technologies, robotics and automation, and in combination with upskilling of the workforce. You can be competitive globally if you've got an export focus and you've got a focus on quality and you're reskilling, upskilling constantly. That we can be competitive in Australia. So we really haven't caught up with what I'd describe as a sophisticated understanding of the role of advanced manufacturing in the economy. That's what we have. That's the challenge for Australia in the 21st century, is to understand how centrally important manufacturing is to the economy, to celebrate mass manufacturing, which was the foundation of South Australia and Australia in many ways, but then to move well beyond that to high value added manufacturing, which many of our panellists are involved in right at the moment. So it's off the back of that commitment that we can do well, but it won't happen without really significant investment by the industrial partners. And by the industrial partners, I mean government, industry and universities together, working over the medium term on sustained uptake and diffusion of advanced technologies in industry.
Maybe you touch on the catapult sites, John,
Exactly.
in terms of the UK government, going back to policy, invested in what they call the catapults in the UK, and I think there's quite a few catapult sites A couple that we as a business, BA Systems, are sort of closely involved with, one at Sheffield at the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre, and one at Strathclyde University, the Advanced Forming Centre. That government policy, which was to invest in advanced manufacturing, in very similar to what we're talking about, in cities where industries had sort of gone away. So in Sheffield, certainly the steel industry had sort of been in demise, as well as the sort of closure of mining in that area. Invested in a catapult facility there that actually employs more people now than what was there at that facility previously. So, you know, those catapult sites and that deliberate policy by the UK government to invest has attracted both investment from industry, so Sheffield in particular, there's Rolls-Royce, McLaren are there, BA Systems are there, as well as Boeing. And so you see that attracting, and it does sort of start to build almost like a bit of a momentum of its own. You know, so you've got not just the people that work there in terms of numbers of people, but the kinds of jobs that they do.
And it helps lower barriers to entry, if you like, for small and medium-sized companies that, you know, who are a little bit nervous about investing in new technologies because of fear around the cost and whether or not they'll get a good rate of return on investment in those new technologies or upskilling of their staff. So these sorts of facilities have proved to be transformational regional economies in the face of difficult circumstances. In the UK, it was, you know, the demise of the coal industry that drove that enormous investment in advanced manufacturing. In Australia, I suppose it's the demise of the auto industry that could do the same. So we're on the cusp of that. The state government's invested in what we're doing at Tonsley, which is fantastic, and we're hoping to sort of build significantly on that over the next few years.
A catalyst is obviously very useful. George, what's the, you know, Lot 14 has been running for a while now. What's the vibe down there like, for want of a better word? The vibe.
The vibe of the place is amazing. I mean, you go back 3 years and it was 10 people working there, then 100. I think there's 1,100 people on site now, and the heritage buildings have been sort of all, you know, retrofitted and upgraded, and now they've almost finished with the demolition and building the new innovation and entrepreneurship hub. It's a really amazing environment. Like the unlikely, you know, serendipitous connections make life really easy there. So you've got space, defence, Australian Institute of Machine Learning, but all these diverse groups all bumping into each other. So the speed with which you can sort of have ideas, talk about ideas, make connections and make things happen, I think is really, really important. And I think now you're starting to sort of get a bit more maturity in how Lot 14 fits into the overall state ecosystem and the role Tonsley plays, which is very different and is growing around advanced manufacturing. I think we're starting to get more mature in how these innovation precincts work with each other.
And they're all interrelated too. There's the technologies that are at Lot 14, they're interrelated. So you can't have AI, machine learning, if you don't have consideration for your cyber fabric. You know, most companies who get into the space sector are typically already in defence sector. So, and that's, I think, is the real success of it, because we want diversified businesses in our sector, and I think that environment enables and supports the diversification of our industries across the various sectors, and that collaboration to continue to grow and support one another.
I agree. And, you know, in the course of a day, you can bump into the head of the Australian Space Agency, the person who runs the A3C, the Australian Cyber Collaboration Centre. You know, it's amazing. Like, all of the parties are there, and it just makes it really quick and easy to actually work through ideas and have conversations.
I think Audra hit the nail on the head. You know, the word's collaboration, and what we see at Lot 14 is people, as George just said, with ideas, and they're able to share those and you know, collaborate together and really take it forward at a speed I haven't seen before. And the same goes back when we're talking about manufacturing and suppliers. To me, it's no longer a manufacturer and a supplier. It's manufacturing and partners, because we have to collaborate so that we're working together and then we're growing together. And as the manufacturers get larger, the supply chain gets better and stronger. And that's what we're doing here in South Australia. So I think it's exciting from that point of view. And then you look at, you know, people like George and Andrew Nunn, the chief entrepreneur, and Jim Wally. We need people prepared to put themselves out there as entrepreneurs and show the example to young people. Because again, you know, when we invested in manufacturing in 2007, it was not the thing to do. Offshoring was the way to go. So I'm really happy to stand up and say, look, we are a manufacturer and we're proud of it, because we need to set those examples and show that what's possible. And once you show what's possible, then people follow, and it builds bigger and bigger.
And I think, you're seeing some of the startups at Lot 14, and I think it's Ping off the top of my head. I try to keep on top of all of them, but I think Ping, are you working with Ping?
We're supporting
So
Ping,
you're part of the supply chain to Ping now. They build intelligent listening for wind farms. And so you're starting to see this diversification and enabling activity going on. Like if you weren't in existence, it would be harder for Ping to work. So these connections are...
Absolutely, and they went through the Innovative Manufacturing Accelerator program at Tonsley, at Flinders University. So there's a lot of connections that we take for granted that are maturing, as you say.
And I think one of the things, Cameron, I think about quite a lot, because I've been fortunate to sort of be at Lot 14 from the beginning and spend most of my time there. How do we get the message out? Like, how do we explain the depth of opportunity and the purposeful careers that are there? Because I think I look at, there's just so many jobs across the defence space, cyber, high-tech businesses that are sort of part of Lot 14 and the other precincts like Tonsley. There are thousands of open jobs, high-tech, good quality jobs, and then they're enabling other, more sort of everyday jobs that exist inside companies like marketing, bookkeeping, and so forth. So there's this real growth coming. Yet you talk to a lot of people outside this sort of world we're in, and they don't see it. So I think there's this huge opportunity for so many careers, and I sort of every few weeks have some people from the Adelaide Uni come across and give them a bit of a tour. And it just opens their eyes to the sort of the art of the possible that's coming.
What George has alluded to is something very important in advanced manufacturing, and that is this blurring between making things and the provision of services. So manufacturers are more than they ever have been, becoming service providers at the same time as they're making goods and services. So they're adding value to products by making them smart products. And Anthony's a good example of that.
And the hope is that a lot of these employees will go on to create their own companies as well as their skills develop. And
Exactly.
you'll get further spin-outs. Do we have enough people going into the pipeline at the moment? I imagine there's a pretty serious war for talent. Maybe Audra and Sharon, defence is a very long timeline. How are you working with, I guess, schools and government to ensure that you've got the skills you need? And is it also going to bring a lot more people into South Australia as we need to fill these roles?
Well, we've already seen the reversal of the old brain drain back into SA, which is great to see. Big projects are going to attract a lot of people. And when you look at the Hunter class project, it's going to go for a very long time. And people who are going to work on the last ship probably not even been born yet, which is one of the things that we like to say. And so that engagement, starts pretty early if we can. Part of our establishment of our innovation hub at Tonsley is actually designed to demystify some of the work that we're doing. If you're ever down at Line 0, down at what was the old Mitsubishi manufacturing facility there, you can see in. That's not defence secret. It's designed so that if you're at TAFE, if you're at uni, if you're on school break, and you're just riding your bike around Tonsley, which quite often people do, then you can see in to the facility. We want people to get curious. You can see robots. You can see a robotic dog. You can see some of our mechatronics engineers who are ladies working in there. So we want people to get curious. We host quite a lot of tours. A lot easier for us to hold tours down there than it is at the shipyard, of course, and so that's actually one of our main ways to engage with people, because you can see hands-on that this is not around a dirty environment with a welder. This is using a robot to do welding. This is a very different environment for people.
But I think building the pipeline of people into that fabric starts with the schools, and I think we still got a lot of work to do in the school sector, and what we don't have is a breadth of understanding and awareness in our education system and in the parents of today as to what those careers actually look like. And I've got 2 daughters who have just finished school. I won't tell you how old they are, give away my age. But when they were going through school, there's still a perception out there that when you graduate, you should be a doctor or a lawyer, and they would never be an accountant because mum's an accountant and that's no good apparently. But and that was the success of life, being a doctor or a lawyer or something. But you know, and that was because the education system is constructed so that they're encouraged to go and continue to educate, go to university, and that's almost, the pressure is almost put onto students that is an indication of their success. We haven't broken down the perceptions of barriers that, hey, it is actually okay to go and do a trade. In fact, there's a lot of very well-off electricians and plumbers out there who run their own businesses. And we don't get that message out there. And it's largely because the education system and the teachers, the people who are the mentors of students, aren't aware themselves, and they can't impart with that knowledge effectively enough to be able to provide the pipeline that we need. So we need to be doing more in schools and in the parents. Not all parents, I mean, I'm quite lucky. I know the sector and I can speak to it, but there are parents out there who've never had an exposure to any of these trades. There are some parents out there who have never worked in their life, but they would like their child to work, and they can't teach and help them understand what careers are available. So that's, I think, an area we need to be spending more time in.
George, we're on the Entrepreneurship Advisory Board from when it was set up. How important is that message that you can create your own job, not, you know, go and work for somebody else?
I think it's really two messages. One, create your own job, and the other is it's not a linear pathway. That's right. Like you might start as a plumber but end up creating your own business in something completely different, or as an electrician, and I think I see it a lot, that there's this sort of view that it's got to be linear: school, uni, job, career, pathway. Like that's just not how it's working. I think it's fragmenting more and more. It's just very diverse, and it's this sort of view that you should be fearless in respect of, like, I'm going to do something and learn from that, and then move over to this, and then try that, and move over here. And you know, if I started as a chemical engineer, never worked a day as a chemical engineer, and I think it's, you know, educating parents and schools and so forth. That's sort of the way the world is working now. You sort of make a bet and go in a direction and have the confidence to change direction as you learn more about what you're passionate about and how the world is changing.
I've always had the thought that the best way to get people into STEM is, you know, drive a flying car or a Lamborghini into a school at, you know, year 8, and that sort of sets the seed, rather than, you know, go and do maths and science, because they are difficult subjects. But I think people forget that they're creative subjects as well, aren't they?
I think so. I think, you know, engineers and people who build things, they actually make things, are building the future that we're going to be enjoying and living in, and, you know, solving the world's really complex problems. We need them, right? So, and I think the decisions are made early, like year 8 and 9 is the right time for people to be inspired. And I think, you know, we need things that genuinely inspire people to go, it is worth doing maths, physics, chem, and all of these sorts of subjects that are sort of provide the foundation stones for these sort of more complex careers. And
Anthony, I imagine your staff would, a lot of them would move through from, you know, entry level to more creative and design, and sort of come out with ideas for new products. I can't remember the figure, but we've spoken before about you put something like 30% a year back into research. So
yeah, 15 cents in every dollar.
Is
back
there
in R&D.
A good pathway there for people who, you know, might have a bent towards engineering, but, you know, uni might not fit or something like that?
Yeah, no, look, we got numerous case studies in our business of people who have gone down the I guess engineering track. They found it difficult. They dropped out. Then they've come to REDARC. They've started in a trade. Then they've gone on and gone back to engineering, and now progressing their career from there. So, you know, I think as George says, that it's not all about you take that career and that's where you stay. I think we go on this path until we find what we're really, really passionate about. And I think that's the key, is that you know, a career is something that you can try lots of different things, but it's the passion that counts, because that's what takes you to your end goal. And, you know, our goal is, if we're going to be a world-class business, we need world-class people. And so, you know, let people be creative, let them try different things, give them opportunities to move in different areas of the business. In fact, we encourage people to move around and try different areas, because different set of eyes, different ideas, you know, that's when the magic happens.
Cameron, I think part of the problem is the view that we've had of manufacturing for the last decade or so. You know, the common perception is that manufacturing is, you know, on a continual slide down in Australia and in South Australia. And you know, what we know from the employment numbers right at the moment is that actually manufacturing employment has stabilised, which is fantastic. And in some critical sectors like the ones we've talked about today, it's growing. and it's set to grow over the next decade, particularly off the back of investments in shipbuilding. So we've got to turn that popular view around, that mythology around, if you like, that there aren't jobs in manufacturing. Because there are, and they're some of the most interesting, rewarding and exciting jobs, but it's difficult, I think, for young people these days to get windows into what that looks like. And down at Tonsley, we've created this extraordinary little environment. BAE actually has led this at Tonsley, called the Factory of the Future facility, and we, over a 12-month period, we had 1,000 people actually visit that facility. So it's proven to be fascinating, partly because of the robotic dog that Sharon referred to before, called Spot the dog. But
we've renamed him Fearless.
Oh, Fearless, Fearless the dog, absolutely. So Fearless the dog, but the Fearless is perhaps one of the most spectacular examples of what you can see down at Tonsley. But it's just getting a sense of what modern manufacturing looks like in the 21st century. It's and anyone who gets in touch with that, who sees it and gets up close and personal with it, is inspired by it.
I think the opportunity to paint that picture, though, now is much better than it was even 3 or 4 years ago, because you have got these companies doing these things, and you can go down to line 0, or you can go to lot 14 and REDARC and see real advanced manufacturing happening.
Absolutely.
5 years ago, that was really hard to sort of create that content and show what that future could look like to people who are making decisions about their careers.
I think the key thing for me was, when the Industry 4, when we really started to hear about it, probably about 5-6 years ago, it was lots of presentations, lots of people talking about it. It looked, it was very German looking, and very looking at companies that were highly vertically integrated. And from an SME perspective, people looking at that going, well, that's all great. It looks like robots and stuff. What does that mean to me? How would I implement that in my business? I can't afford that. That's mad. And so, I think there was a lot of listening, but not a lot of doing. Part of certainly what Anthony's been doing, some of the things that we've been doing in terms of working with the Innovative Manufacturing Research Centre, in terms of how we translate Industry 4 into real outcomes for industry. Yes, we're doing it for ourselves in terms of what does it mean for BAE Systems, but actually we're sharing that with industry, and part of that CRC output is training packages for SMEs. So a lot of the things that people can see is actually how they might apply that to their business. So they don't have to invest. So those human issues around working with technology, how do I deal with unions? How do I deal with training people in different technologies? Can I wear a virtual reality headset for 2 minutes or more? Does it make my head hurt? How long does the battery last? All those things that an SME, really would not be able to have the wherewithal. We're using these activities to basically say, here's the outcome of that. Have a look at it, come and play with it. Does it actually suit what you want to do? And if so, then you know where you're going to put your investment. Okay. To me, that's actually part of what we're trying to create in that sovereign, when we talk sovereign capability, which is what, we're tasked to build, not just 9 ships, but a sovereign capability in shipbuilding, but it's actually wider than shipbuilding. It's actually, you build it in defence, but people who are doing defence actually do commercial work as well. Right. So, it's building that whole ecosystem and using that investment that the government's making in shipbuilding that's a wider economic benefit to the nation, in effect. So that is part of building that ecosystem. You can't just say, just giving an SME an order, and Audra will tell you this, just giving them an order doesn't actually build capability. Okay, building capability is much wider than that. It is the research and development. It is people development, skills development, and it is a longer lasting outcome than I've got an order for a year to build a load of parts, and when I've done, that's it. Okay, that's really not what this is about. Okay, it's really about building that whole ecosystem of capability, and that's how we want to spend our money.
This isn't the last question, but I will flag that for the last question, I might ask any big policy changes you'd like to see. So maybe think on that for a little bit before I get there. Recently, obviously, we've had Naval Group's submarines program came to an end. We have a new submarine program about to start. Audra, how has the industry responded to that? And we like to see, I guess, more local content from a new contract, or I know it's a moving feast at the moment, but yeah, obviously there's been some disappointment, but also a sense of opportunity. So what's the feeling around that?
Yeah, it is both good and bad news. And the good news of the AUKUS announcement, if we look at this more strategically, is it actually presents more opportunities for Australian industry sooner, because we know that the vessels will need to be sustained. So irrespective of what the government decides to do with the manufacture of the next boats, there's talk about UK and US utilising Australia as a forward operating base and having vessels located here. So that is likely to result in opportunities in the sustainment side of the supply chain for Australian industry. Now that's opportunities which will likely materialise much sooner than what we had anticipated under the existing program. So you've got to see that as a bonus. Not to mention the fact that we're now talking about nuclear-powered submarines, which again is a new technology and it presents new learning opportunities for industry. So, you know, that's certainly great. When it comes to capability versus content, that's always something that's to be debated. And as Sharon said, giving a company a purchase order doesn't actually build the capability. We want actually sustainable businesses who can continue to innovate and evolve. And that's not something that happens when you just make a short-term, once-off investment in industry. We're talking about a commitment to Australian industry made over time that actually supports that businesses, which means the return on that investment may not materialise immediately. So the disadvantage is that, you know, industry now have to stop and pivot to understand what is the new direction of the program. That delays a lot of the business development activities. You know, there's a lot of great businesses out there who have been investing significant time and effort to pursue opportunities and understand the Naval Group way of doing business, and now they're going to have to understand a new way of doing business with whoever the new trading partner is going to be for the build. So there's pros and cons, but I actually do like the fact that we are now looking at sustainment opportunities sooner than what we would have been under the previous approach.
And John, the example of Germany is usually one that in advanced manufacturing crops up quite a lot, especially in Industry 4.0. Are there any lessons that we can take from, I guess, other countries about, you know, what good policy settings are, or, you know, how to get people into the pipeline? Anything that you've come across in your work over the years that's...
Sure. We've been inspired by the British experience to a large extent. And Sharon referred to it earlier on, but there's a network of catapult centres in the United Kingdom that work with manufacturers and universities on accelerating the growth of advanced manufacturing in that nation. And they learnt from the Germans. So Sharon talked about Industry 4.0. Well, actually, the Germans coined that term, but it's a strategy. It's not a set of technologies, it's actually a strategy for accelerating the growth of advanced manufacturing in Germany. And we're all trying to emulate that internationally, including the Americans. The Americans set up a network of manufacturing institutes, national manufacturing institutes, again, following the German model. In Germany, there's a network of around about 63 Fraunhofer institutes, and these are all dedicated to accelerating the growth of manufacturing. What we can learn from that is if you bring the partners together and you've got a 10-year plan, a 15-year plan, a 20-year plan for growing advanced manufacturing, you can do it. And they are doing it very, very well off the back of similar experiences to that we've been through here in Australia, a period of deindustrialisation, decline in employment in manufacturing in particular. Off the back of that, they begin to rebuild their manufacturing sectors, but that won't happen automatically. It requires a national policy direction that's dedicated to patient, medium to longer term investment in facilities that work closely with companies to help build capacity and capability, partly on the uptake and diffusion of technologies, but also crucially in relation to building the skills base that you need to be able to sustain that over the long term, because you know, you can have large projects but not have the capability to be able to implement them successfully, so you end up importing all those skills or getting the work done offshore, and you're always at risk of that if you don't build domestic capability. So that's an important part of the so-called sovereign capability building objective of governments. The other thing that I think is crucial, and we don't do it very well in Australia, is reward collaboration between universities and industry. Other nations are very, very good at doing that. They have collaboration dividends associated with their R&D incentive schemes, for example. So we're great at inventing things in Australia, but we're not so good at translating those inventions into commercial outcomes. And that's partly because we don't have the institutions in place that exist between universities and industry. And that's what we're trying to solve at Tonsley at the moment, at the Tonsley Innovation District, with companies like BAE and REDARC and others, creating that sort of first world-class industrial transformation accelerator.
Is there a bit of a policy gap potentially federally? South Australia has certainly, over the past decade, decided that advanced manufacturing is where it wants to be. Is there a need for more of a conversation at a federal level around this?
Oh, look, I think so. Look, the Modern Manufacturing Initiative, when it was announced a couple of years ago now, was a landmark announcement. I think it was a game changer in terms of there being, I think for the first time, bipartisan or multi-partisan commitment for manufacturing in Australia. So that was very, very welcome. It's just that we have to build substantially on that. We need to see in the next budget a substantial commitment to that being realised over a 5-10 year period. It's not good enough to fund things for 12 months or 2 years. You've got to build enduring capability.
Our industrialisation strategy, though, could be better executed if we have a government that's committed to a Department of Industry, where in 5 years we don't have a revolving door of ministers going through our Department of Industry portfolio. I think that's the elephant in the room. You can't get traction in your policy if you don't have stability in the leadership of the portfolio. Each time a new minister comes through, it's huge disruption, and industry's struggling with that. So as soon as we can get some stability in the leadership of our industry portfolio, we should be able to get some kind of real rungs on the ladder with our industry policy.
Indeed.
Well, we've got about 4 minutes left, so I might throw open the idea of what policy would you like to see changed. Audra, you've already thrown out a great one of the overseas made sticker. I think that's a wonderful idea. Anthony, any ideas that you have that you'd like to see implemented, or sort of a push from either government or industry?
Yeah, I think probably over the last few years, we've seen a little bit of erosion of the amount of funding available under the R&D tax scheme. So I think for businesses to continue to grow in Australia and invest here, I'd like to see that, more encouragement for doing research locally, partnering with universities, collaborating with other SMEs, so that we can really build that horsepower that we need here in South Australia and in Australia. So anything we can do around R&D tax to encourage businesses to create more, hire more researchers, do interesting things, take risks. That's what we need.
And Audra, I think I sold you short. You had two great ideas, the ministerial stability as well. Anything else you'd like to add to that?
I do like the idea of making it harder for overseas products to buy their way into our shores. And I'm not talking about companies, I'm actually talking about the products and services. So,
and some companies are not sort of shy about doing that to Australian products or other overseas products. So.
Well, I think, where it's about paying tax in this country.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that the entities that are here are paying their fair share of tax.
George, anything policy-wise or sort of big picture you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think from a startup perspective, like from an early stage company, government procurement, federal and state, let's buy from these companies and take some risk on to help enable these companies to sort of lift up. We're really bad as a country and a state, in my view, at buying from early stage companies. Other jurisdictions around the world do it really well. So I think that would really help get the flywheel of growth going for early stage companies.
And John, anything that you'd particularly like to see if you're king for a day?
Yeah, no, give me an hour, Cameron, give me an hour. There's so much to say, but look, I think one of my closing points has to be that shipbuilding is the driver of industrial transformation here in South Australia for the 21st century. It's the scale and the duration of the project that makes it a game changer for South Australia. It doesn't replace the automotive industry, but it is of sufficient scale to be able to be a magnet for confidence, and we're already seeing that. You're seeing SMEs attracted to want to work in the shipbuilding sector because of the scale and the size of the project, but also the complexity of shipbuilding also lends itself to accelerating the growth of advanced manufacturing. Challenge is for us to maximise the opportunity, to see that as a national challenge and a state challenge for us to really make the most of shipbuilding for the acceleration of advanced manufacturing in other sectors. And I think we've got a once-in-a-generation opportunity to do that.
And Sharon, any closing thoughts?
Can I have two? Real quick.
Yes.
So the first one is actually just sort of follow on from John's comment around that. I think, you know, we have to take an enterprise approach. And when I say we have to, we are actually contracted to take an enterprise approach to building that sovereign capability. And that, so what I'd really like to see, and we are seeing glimpses of it, is the other side of that enterprise, so that, you know, from an industry perspective, certainly we've got industry and academia really leaning into that enterprise approach. Really like to see, you know, other parts of government, not just defence, but Department of Industry, Department of Education, as two key examples, really leaning into that enterprise approach to build sovereign capability. I think, you know, like I said, we see glimpses of it, but I think, you know, really pulling that together. The second part was really around things like the Modern Manufacturing Initiative, which is absolutely fantastic initiative. And certainly we know lots of the sort of state governments have partnered with industry to put in those applications to the federal government. What I'd really like to see, that as part of that entire process, whether it's this round or future rounds, to say that what we develop in Australia is complementary state by state, not competing state by state. I think, you know, that investment in those capabilities, to leverage it. Australia is not big enough to have competing efforts in states. You know, we'd really like to see the, you know, the catapult-like sites, if you like, that said, you know, if you've got doing one thing in another area, don't repeat it somewhere else. Let's actually have that maximise the dollars that we're spending across Australia.
And let's not fight amongst ourselves about where it might particularly go.
Well, it's, you know, instead of arguing about, you know, what size of piece of the pie, let's argue about making the pie bigger.
Look, thanks a lot for your insights, everyone. It's been great. That's all we have time for today. To keep the conversation going, you can use the Fearless Conversations hashtag on Twitter. And to review today's and past conversations, you can visit theadvertiser.com.au/fearlessconversations. Next week, Fearless Conversations will feature a panel from the education industry, so be sure to tune in for that one. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.